Holly Williams, thank you so much for joining me on the Story Engine podcast today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Kyle. I'm so excited to talk particularly to this audience because I serve it with you. So it's great
Yeah.
to actually reach out to all these people.
Now, I was just talking you up before we had you on the call, and we are all very excited to learn a couple of your ideas about your your research process and how you really get clear on the ideal clients. Can you share maybe some of the few gems that you find really give you some surprising insights and that people can use to get clear on their audience today?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm very happy to help in this area. So I'm just going to use some of just three actually, because there's many. As you know, when we work with our clients in our agency, we go really deep. But here's three that you can really get just some different angles from, and I want to recommend them because you don't want to just always go from just your same old source. There's a lot of different views that you can come to with interviewing your audience or really getting to know your ideal client. So the first one is if you have an audience, if you have a list, if you have a Facebook, platform that maybe you're using or Instagram, then I would definitely encourage that you survey your audience. And asking them some really important questions, really finding out, number one, like who they are, but also why are they coming to you? Why are they, what pain are you solving for them? What a really great question, and this is my favorite one, and I use it pretty much on any survey that I'm writing, is what was going on for you when you bought this product or when you chose to meet with me as a service provider? Because a lot of times that'll give you the insight into what's going on in your client's mind. Like that, a lot of times people will share not just like, let's say it was someone with chronic pain. They're not just going to say like, oh, well, my back was hurting the whole time. You get this whole story. You get this part about like how they were having trouble getting out of bed or that they couldn't lift up their children anymore. And it just reached this crescendo moment where they were like, I need to do something. And all those pieces of information are really important because that lets you really tap into a person. It's not just, oh, the person with chronic pain. It really lets you know, oh, this is John and he's 48 and he really wants to work at having a healthy body for the rest of his life. So it really personalizes things when you can survey your audience and get their feedback. I typically recommend asking 5 to 7 questions. You want to go maybe as many as 10, but you don't want to go more than that. You want to just get a few key pointers from people. And then the second thing I would recommend, and this is a little bit different, and again, we want to look at some different viewpoints. I recommend going to do Amazon reviews and looking at product reviews. So let's say you're a service provider, somebody who is a chiropractor who helps people. You can go and find other authors who've written about, let's say, something to do with back, and just look at some of the comments in the section there. There's a lot of, again, people are so willing to share their story, and this really surprises me in Amazon reviews, and especially, is sometimes you really hear this incredible amount of language and story that people share where they're so happy to have finally found an answer, that they're willing to share a lot about their pain, a lot about their suffering, and then talk about how this book solved it. And so when you see those things, it can really highlight to you the individual needs that you can hit on as a service provider or a business with your products.
Something I'd like to add in there. There's lots of different ratings of Amazon. There's 5-star ratings, which I would recommend that people, there's sometimes I agree there's quality and depth. And when people are pouring their heart out, whether it's a 5-star, whether it's a 1-star, if they really spent a lot of time on it, it's worth looking at. But it's also worth looking at, I like the middle stars. The 3-star ones are particularly good because they have things they like and then they say, oh, it's weak in this area or it could be improved here. The ones that are just 1-stars are usually the person has just had a bad day or haven't had their coffee yet and are just rolling around. And the 5-star ones, are sometimes just a lot of friends, or if they don't have anything like very deep and constructive to say. Another cool thing that just came to mind as you were describing that is there's Amazon top reviewers. And I don't know that much about them, but I think that an opportunity, if there's a specific top reviewer that you can identify in your niche, I would look and see what they're doing and what they're saying about all the different books in the area or other things they've reviewed that might be a research treasure trove. And that's a little, once you look at the reviews, there's a little green tag next to their name to look for.
Yeah, that is a great tip as well. And you've mentioned the 3-star reviews where they talk about where things are weak, and be strategic about that. Pay attention to what they're saying. This was weak in, because that's actually something that if you see a lot of comments in this particular topic where people are saying, this was really great, but it didn't have a lot of practical, like, how do I do this in the morning? Or how do I do this with a family? Or how do I fit this into my busy schedule? As soon as you start seeing those repeated messages, then you can be very strategic with your own messaging and say, okay, I'm going to come along with a solution for that. And you then make yourself stand out as someone different to that ideal client, saying, I offer something different here for you. So that is a really good way to just kind of come at it from a different angle. And then my third suggestion is just interviewing your past clients or people who bought your product. I mean, they're going to tell you so many things. And sometimes it's great. Like you and I, we work together, and I will interview people who've worked with you, and that kind of gives it's nice working with a copywriter that way, because I can get sometimes some different answers than maybe you would get from interviewing your own clients, right? I can find out a little bit more about the experience. And so that's where hiring a copywriter is a really great move when you're looking at creating messaging for this ideal client. And so just being able to ask some questions in terms of, how was their experience? Why did they buy this? What was the moment where they said, yes, I'm going to hit the buy button and do this and commit to this process? What made them say yes? Or even interviewing people who didn't buy your product or didn't sign up with you and saying, why didn't you? What made you say, not this time around? Because sometimes in there, you can really find out, are you actually attracting the ideal client? Or is there something in your messaging that's missing that you could really come alongside and communicate differently with some of your wording to really attract that ideal client to work with you?
So I would just wonder, somebody who didn't buy from me, I just would I'd have trouble expecting them to be willing to participate in a survey, but that's not the case. Is it more common even for people who
Yeah.
didn't buy to respond to surveys?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, sometimes you can send out a survey, particularly after a launch or a product launch. You can say, hey, if you're segmenting your list, of course, you can send, hey, why didn't you purchase? I'd love to know. Take 2 minutes and tell me. And I'm actually surprised the number of people who did. And usually it's a 2-minute survey, right? Like, why didn't you buy? And it's like, oh, I didn't have the money this time, or I didn't have the time to take the course, or I didn't have it just didn't seem like it was right for me. And taking the time to learn their objections really can just help you identify how you can meet their needs the next time around. But yeah, I'm always surprised people actually do respond with that. And I think there's a lot of times there's a hope that they could work with you. And then of course, you do get some grouchy people who are like, they always give you kind of funny one sentence comments about like, I don't want to work with you, or something like that. So
Fair enough. So I think those are really good tips, and that brings a lot of different ways that people can go deeper and examine different elements of their audience. And time again, it's such an important part because it's part of the process of, as you're learning more, I think it's something we are consistently doing and we are consistently learning. And it helps us refine our message, which is something, it's been kind of an internal discussion right now, even
Yeah.
what our powerful promise, our signature statement, one
Mm.
liner is. And we've been, even in the writing of this episode, we discussed some transformations of it. And then we mentioned to another team member, Jamie, that we were doing this, and there's yet another process that we're going through. So can you tell me a little bit about your perspective and working on a message like this, and what are the important things to bring forward and always be refining?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple tips because, when we were working on this episode, you sent over your statement, and I was like, I think we need to refine this. I think we can do this stronger. And like you mentioned the word fluid, and I think this has really come, our agency right now is going through a lot of transformation, and we are discovering who we are more and more. And as we see bigger wins with our clients, we're really refining that. But let me read the statement here, what you originally had, and then I'll talk about how I refined it. So when we were talking, you said, I help entrepreneurs, coaches, and influencers just like you use story to communicate what you do and offer to those who need it most in a way that will help them or will get them to take action. And so the first thing is, and this is a great test when you're writing out your sentence for yourself, for your business, is to actually read it out loud. So when I read this statement out loud, it just felt like a mouthful. And you could even hear a couple minutes ago when I was reading it, I actually stumbled over the words that I was saying. So that is a really great way to just see, am I being clear? Am I being concise with what I want to say? So working with you, Kyle, I know how passionate you are about the clients that you choose to work with. I know how passionate you are about storytelling. So I had to find a way, could we make this simpler? Could we take those ideals that you have, and knowing who your ideal client is, how can we match those? So then I just refined it a little bit, and I said this statement: I help entrepreneurs, coaches, and influencers use storytelling to attract their ideal audience and inspire them to take massive action. And so that you can see is a lot more clear, concise. So let's just break down that sentence so that people can hear it and understand it. So right away, what you do: I help, and then we go right into the who. You help entrepreneurs, coaches, and influencers by doing what? Using storytelling to attract their ideal audience. But we don't stop there, because once they have learned how to attract their ideal audience, what I know you are most passionate about, Kyle, is that you want to help the people that you're coaching and training. You want to see them have clients that take massive action, that really, join with what their purpose is and see the change that your clients want to make. So writing this statement was very easy for me because I know you and I know your passion for what you're doing. But when we're talking about how to make a statement like this, and we will include a download for this in the show notes, just a very simple statement is what you do, who you help, how you help them, and what you want the end goal to be. And so we'll include a little statement that you can fill in the blank if you need some help with that. And for us too, this is fluid right now, right? We are having a lot of discussions about how we are making this right now in our agency, and what that all looks like. But for now, that's what we've settled on.
Yeah, and along with this, in the show notes, I would invite anybody to post their own statement that they come up with using the template, and Holly and I will take a look and respond to them if anybody puts them in there, because I'm just interested in this, and it's an experiment. It's something that is always refining. You learn something at a workshop, you add it in. You learn something new about your audience, you take something away. And it's not something that needs to always be set in stone. I mean, sometimes it is on printed materials and things like that, but it's something you want to be experimenting with and testing and growing with. And I think a lot of this is always a process of it. And so it's always good to be, asking these questions, refining your message, and really testing who you are. So thank you so much for for kind of giving us those insights into what
Oh,
the key components are.
yeah, you bet. And, I just want to touch on, before we wrap up here, Kyle, on the word experiment that you used, because I think sometimes we get really cerebral about building our business. And we're like, if I write this down, I've got to be committed to this statement. And a lot of times, working with different people, we see that they're really afraid to commit to a statement. But I like your word experiment, being curious, playing around with these words and these ideas. I think that, if people out there just need permission to play with their words, you've got it. Go play, figure it out, and share with us what you come up with.
Let's hear it. All right. Thanks for joining us, Holly, and thanks
You
for
bet.
listening to the Story Engine podcast.